and welcome to this edition of Türkiye Talks. I'm joined by Kadir Üstün. We are going to talk about recent developments in Turkish foreign policy. Kadir, hi, how are you?
Good evening, Bora. How are you?
Thank you. Uh, as you followed, Turkey hosted Israeli president after more than a decade. Turkey hosts an Israeli president. I think this is a sign of change in diplomacy in the Middle East. Maybe we can say this is one of the rings in the change of events. I mean, there were many visits. UAE leader came to Turkey. Turkish president went to UAE. There is talks. There are talks between Turkey and Egypt, and this is one of the top level visits in this atmosphere. How do you evaluate this visit, Turkish-Israeli relationship?
Thank you, Bora. As you said, Turkish diplomacy in the Middle East has been very lively these days, and of course, Ukraine war is also very active, and Turkey has a strong role in that. But as we agreed, we'll talk about that a little later. But as far as Israel goes, this is very significant. Israeli president has been received Erdogan, and the messages coming out of that meeting were seem to be very positive. They seem to have been coordinated well. Visit in terms of its relations with Israel, Turkey has some priorities, of course. Um, um, as you know, during the pandemic, the trade has increased. Turkey has been a manufacturing base, and its foreign trade increased with so many countries, including with Israel, by about 35%. And we are seeing some reflection of that stronger trade volume, which is about $8.5 billion. Um, and then, of course, the departure of the Netanyahu government it allowed some sort of new opening, new perspective on the relationship. There were some, I think, behind the scenes talks going on to fully normalize the relationship, but it really got some momentum because Netanyahu government had to go through several elections, as you remember, and then of course Turkey wants to underline the fact that Turkey still supports Palestinians strongly. It supports a two-state solution. It supports the status of Jerusalem. It doesn't want it to be altered, obviously. It wants to play a constructive role. It wants to still allow it would like Israel to continue to allow humanitarian aid to Palestinians. So the Turkish role in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is rather positive overall. But when things get heated on the ground, as you know from our history, this is this is a very broad, non-partisan issue in Turkey. If something happens on the Palestinian front, Turkish public is very sensitive to this, and politicians often have to respond. So I don't want to talk too much about this, but as a Turkish journalist following foreign policy in Turkey, you would appreciate more than anyone else how sensitive Israel issue can be. But at the same time, President Erdogan has made this move and made openly invited the Israeli president. He also called him several times, I believe, in recent months. So there's a new positive momentum in this relationship, and maybe you can address what kind of sort of political capital President Erdogan might be spending, what kind of political risk, if he's taking any, and then how Turkish public sees this, how the Turkish opposition sees this, Maybe you can address these aspects of this visit.
I think when a Turkish president takes a decision, although there's a strong opposition in Turkey, uh, most people follow and try to understand why this decision or this step has taken. You remember President Erdogan is ruling Turkey since 2003, and he had lots of contacts with Israeli leaders in the past. Remember, in 2007, Shimon Peres came to Turkey and spoke in Turkish parliament together with a Palestinian leader, Mahmoud Abbas. So Turkey, in a way, provided a common ground for Israelis and Palestinians. Also, Turkey has tried to support Palestinians in terms of humanitarian aid, financial aid. Turkey opened under Erdogan's rule, opened a free trade area in Erez near Gaza. Later in 2008, Turkey mediated between Israel and Syria. So actually, at that time, he was the prime minister. Prime Minister Erdogan at that time, uh, he had no categorical opposition to working with Israel. But when it came to Palestinian rights and the attacks against civilians, Turkey, not only the government, but as you have said, most of the population was very angry and furious actually uh, about what's happening in Palestinian territories in Gaza. And also the flotilla crisis, it added more to the tension. But all the time, I mean, Turkey had accepted apology from Prime Minister Netanyahu. I think it was in 2013. So Turkish attitude was always constructive and positive. Uh, but because of the attitude of former Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, it was difficult to continue relationship because I think Israeli politicians used Turkey uh, as a political tool within their, I mean, in domestic policy. So I think this also added to the problems. But now Israelis have a new government. This president is closer to working with Turkey, and also there's a change in power balances in the region. Now we have a new administration in the U.S., which is who is, I mean, Biden trying to build a new relationship with Iran, and after the Russian-Ukrainian war, after the statement about not buying Russian oil and gas, I think this will develop more, improve more. I think Iran will replace Russian energy sources. So I think now in this new balance of power in the region, countries are trying to recalibrate their positions. So at the end of this thinking and negotiations, now we have Israeli president in Turkey. But different from the past, remember in 1990s, the backbone of the relationship, I always remind people that was military, security, intelligence. But now it is energy, economy, and stability in the region. So I think, as President said, this is an opportunity in energy cooperation. He said this is a great opportunity to work together. I think both nations are close to seizing this moment. So there is an open door. There's opportunities, but it is up to the leaders whether to go in or continue tense relations. I think there is a will. So as they say, if there is a will, there is a way. I think there is a way to mend the ties.
Correct. Bora, I think if we can spend some time discussing the energy aspect, I think that would be helpful for our followers to understand Turkey's perspective on this. In the Eastern Mediterranean, as you remember, Turkey made some significant moves a couple of years ago by, you know, eg- um, striking a maritime delimitation agreement with Libya, and basically outlined its, um, sort of zone of economic exclusive zone, how much it extends all the way to Libya, etc. So it laid a claim in the Eastern Mediterranean natural resources, um, in a way that would basically make anything that excluded Turkey, any kind of project, natural gas project, energy project in the Eastern Mediterranean, impossible. So you couldn't basically do anything without confronting Turkey in a serious manner, and this was done in an environment where natural gas prices were going down significantly, and Egypt, Israel, and Greece and Cyprus tried to create this Eastern Mediterranean Gas Forum to leave Turkey outside and start discussing a pipeline directly into Europe under the Mediterranean, which was financially basically impossible, and everybody knew that. But in the past several months, as you know, um, the United States announced that it also pulled its support from this project. There was no commercial viability, and uh, basically it was the declaration of what we already knew, right? So the most logical export of especially Israeli gas, natural gas, is uh, potentially through Turkey, bringing it to Turkish shore, and there are already pipelines going to Europe. So like you said, this is a strong incentive for both countries, especially right now because of the war in Ukraine, right? So many European countries are dependent on Russian gas, and the U.S. and Europeans are seeking other sources to allow, reduce to reduce their dependency on Russian gas. So, how much do you think? And you mentioned the end of of course, sort of we are in a post-Arab Spring era where the U.S. wants to pivot to Asia, and then these countries are looking at each other, regional countries, and trying to recalibrate their foreign policies. So, if you look at those dynamics, do you feel like natural gas might be the sort of strongest incentive for Turkey, or do you think it's a bit more than that and there are other things to this new effort at full normalization? How do you see that?
I think yes, energy is the connecting line. It seems so, because after this Russia-Ukraine conflict, it is obvious that for many European countries, as you have said, Russia is not a dependable provider because of the situation right now. Nobody wants to work with Russia. We have seen the sanctions, and Russia is in a way being isolated by many countries, especially by the United States and its allies in Europe. So these countries are energy hungry countries, and they have to get natural gas at least for the next 1 or 2 decades until they will find a new energy sources or clean energy, whatever it is. So natural gas and oil is still important, and the alternative is in the Gulf region. Qatar, Iran, so they have great natural gas resources. Plus, Eastern Mediterranean, there are resources, but without a stable environment, nobody will invest, and it will be very expensive for European countries to, reach that natural gas if they try to bypass Turkey. So I think everybody should understand and will understand at some point. Without Turkey, if you look at the map, it is not possible. Turkey is the safest and cheapest route to Europe. So whether it's from Israeli Eastern Mediterranean natural gas or Qatar gas or Iran, whatever, it has to go through Turkey. Uh, they tried to bypass Turkey during the last decade. Before that, there was projects like Nabucco and others. So Turkey was an alternative, but for political and ideological reasons, uh, they tried to bypass and try to open new roads. Remember the corridor in Syria and Iraq. Now I think Israel understands that. Other countries is understanding that. So Turkey now is the best alternative, and it will probably be regarded so in the coming future. I think this is more than only energy issue. Also, I think from Turkish point of view, Turkey also wants to, increase its friends in the region. Plus, we know the Jewish community in the U.S. They have been working against Turkey ideologically. I think that Turkey also, in a way, is trying to diminish the negative impact of these groups in the US, as you much better know than me. This is part of it. And also security wise, I don't believe that Turkey and Israel will be militarily very close because of the Palestinian problem. But I think everybody in the region now understands that Turkey has a power. Turkey is a power that you have to reckon. What happened in Libya, Syria, Karabakh, in other places. Turkey has one of the strongest armies in the region, investing its military, changing dynamics and balance in the field. So I think this is also making Turkey attractive for Israel. So, but okay, as
Yeah.
is the main motive, but I think it's more than that.
Absolutely, Bora. I mean, I think we can try to clarify a little bit the impact of course, normalization with Israel is going to have positive impact on Turkey's relations with U.S. Congress, and as you know, especially pro-Israel groups, not the, you know, I would avoid trying to define it as Jewish community, but pro-Israel, it's especially some pro-Israel groups, their influence in U.S. Congress is very significant, and normalization with Israel would have some positive impact on that front. But I agree. I think the drivers of this rapprochement or the full normalization effort is not really the Turkish efforts to, you know, sort of find some positive reaction from U.S. Congress. It's much more regional based, much more energy, trade, emerging new sort of geopolitical things in the region. And these countries understand the region well, and they're right there. They're facing countries, challenges like Russia and Iran and others. So they can have quite a few common interests throughout the region, including in Syria. So maybe we can switch to now the war in Ukraine. How do you assess the most recent situation?
Yeah, I think as time passes, I think Russia, they have they are in difficult situation, and all the sides, not only Ukraine but Russia also is trying to find a way to, to exit from this situation because it's getting intolerable for both sides. My PhD is on peace processes, and in that, there's a theory that sides have to have mutual hurting stalemate in order to sit and talk about peace or ceasefire. I think from the Ukrainian point of view, their cities are under attack, civilians are being killed, they are destroyed, people became refugees, they are trying to flee the country. It's not tolerable anymore for them. They are losing people, they are losing their daily lives, economy, everything. From the Russian point of view, they were expecting a quick victory, but what they had, now they are under heavy sanctions, they are isolated. Uh, their economy is going to suffer from these sanctions probably. And psychologically, I think one by one, when big American and European companies stop their activities in this country, in Russia, I think the morale is also being affected in a negative way. So imagine you live in Moscow and a shop that you always go, it's closing down, and this has to have a heavy feeling, psychological negative feeling on people. And also they are losing men, soldiers. We have seen many destroyed military vehicles, Russian soldiers being killed by Ukrainians. So it's hurting Russian credibility, and I think these things, when you put them together, I think both sides are in need to talk to each other. And now Turkey is providing an important common ground for them, venue, and also Turkey is a country which has still connections with Russia, talking to Russia. I think this is a great opportunity for both sides, so they can at least stop fighting, they can start a ceasefire, then maybe they can improve or develop something else. I mean, stopping this war. I think Turkey is playing an important facilitator role. I'm not saying mediation, because these two should come together and they have to solve their problems, but Turkey is facilitating. I think this is also good for Turkish foreign policy, because this is the one of the aspects of Turkey, always trying to find a common ground for conflicting sides. I don't know how you evaluate this meeting.
Yes, you're right, Bora. The Turkish diplomatic efforts have been, from the beginning, focused on trying to get a ceasefire that is sustainable, get the two sides to start negotiating a resolution of the war instead of, making this conflict a protracted conflict. At the same time, Turkey did call this an invasion, a war. It has announced that it was going to implement Montreux Agreement, which means Turkey won't allow warships to travel through the Turkish Straits, except for warships that would be returning to their original base, if they're registered with that base. That's what the international agreement requires Turkey to do. So Turkey, on that front, is being very careful with its, legal rights and legal obligations based on the Montreux Agreement. At the same time, Turkey is trying to walk a line where, it hasn't joined the Western sanctions, because that would mean simply confronting Russia without an end game in their mind. It doesn't. Turkey has strong relations with both Ukraine and Russia, multi-level relations, trade, security, tourism and diplomatic relations, etc. Turkey is trying to keep both, open doors open with both countries, both leaderships, and trying to broker a deal, because a bigger war is bad for Turkey. The status of the Black Sea region, the um, the status quo in the Black Sea region could change in a way that doesn't make Turkish security any better. So, in that sense, um, Turkey is um, going to be directly affected by what happens. And we are living in a situation where there is, supply chain pressures around the world. There is inflation around the world, and now there is huge pressures on the energy markets. Oil prices now about $130 a barrel, and Turkey is a very highly energy dependent country. In the long run, these numbers become really unsustainable and exert heavy pressure on all countries, Europe, Turkey, etc. So it's in the interest of everyone, including Turkey, to find a resolution to this conflict. And it's not going to be easy. Let's not, pretend that it can be, resolved through several meetings. And we've seen the Russian behavior in other conflicts where they'll kind of take their time and strike an agreement, temporary ones, and then still keep going with their military operations. And in the previous sessions, we discussed with you that, in my opinion, um, President Putin will need some sort of face-saving victory. And without being able to declare that, I don't know. I don't think he will walk away from this. He's already, suffered the worst of the consequences of sanctions and isolation by the West, and it's increasing even more. So there's not a lot of incentive for him to pull back at this point in time, but he will need some sort of victory for his people. And there was one opinion poll coming out of Russia. Those are rare. I don't know if you saw that, but it was saying that this was an independent poll. It said that he enjoyed the support of some 58% of Russian population for a war that has created so much reaction and resistance outside Russia. That's still a big number, big support for the military operation, quote unquote. Of course, that's not the only dynamic here at play here. Putin is in a tough situation. It wasn't a quick victory, and there is a humanitarian cost to all of this. And Turkey has a lot of experience on that. So Turkey doesn't want this a whole new protracted conflict in the region that would produce millions of refugees. It has already created, I think, close to 2 million Ukrainian refugees in the region. So, uh, bottom line is, the meeting that is supposed to take place in Turkey between Ukrainian foreign minister and the Russian foreign minister hopefully will be a first step towards sort of calming down the situation. But as I said, it won't be easy. At the same time, past half an hour, we've been talking about, the dynamics in the region. It just speaks to how much Turkey's diplomacy is robust and engaged. It's not a country that's kind of sitting and watching idly by to see what happens. It is trying to make a positive contribution and is trying to shape the dynamics on the ground for both its national interest, but also for peace and security in the region. Um, what is the perception, do you think, among Turkish public about the latest U.S. announcement, Bora, that they're now the U.S. is banning oil and natural gas imports from Russia. At the same time, Vice President Harris will visit Eastern Europe, right? Of course, she doesn't have a lot of foreign policy credentials, but what do you think these, sort of big push by the U.S. to really punish Russia and isolate Russia? how do you think that's being perceived in Turkey? Is that something positive, negative, or both? What are the sort of perspectives on that?
Yeah, I mean, if first maybe I should talk about Harris. I think the United States has to assure its allies in Europe these sanctions will not hurt them. But we know that European countries are dependent on energy coming from Russia, so everyone has to divert their sources for this energy, and they need assurance from the United States because they have the initiative, they are implementing these sanctions, but who will suffer from that? Of course, Russians first, but customers of Russia also will have to face consequences of these sanctions. So there should be a way to tolerate this situation, and it is not going to happen quickly. You need time to change all these diversities. I mean, your need to get energy as a country. So I think Harris will try to assure the allies in Europe. When it comes to Turkey, even myself, we have seen a very important rise in the price of oil and gas, and people are trying to understand why it is happening. Domestic politicians, they are using this without touching the international crisis issue. It's like the mismanagement of the government, but it's clear that these prices are going up because of an world crisis, international crisis in energy prices. As you have said, now it has reached 130. I think this is double of normal prices in the world. It was about 60, 65 US dollars per barrel. So prices are going up, and this Russian-Ukrainian war is making the situation worse. So in Turkey, people are trying to understand why it is happening, and of course concerned about this situation. But Turkish government is trying to, explain why it's happening, and also I think Turkey too is looking for alternatives. Turkey has invested in clean energy, invested in nuclear energy, but also Turkey has close relations with Iran. Although we have some problems, maybe Turkey will also look for this, also liquid natural gas now is one of Turkey's options, and Turkey has invested in that previously. When there was sanctions on Iran, Turkey had to divert its supply sources for oil and gas. But I think the main and most probable solution is the oil and gas in the Gulf region, and Turkey's policy recently. I mean, supporting Qatar when there was sanctions or isolation against Qatar by other Gulf countries a few years ago. So I think Turkey is understanding the situation, trying to convince other countries to stabilize their foreign policies and increase the level of cooperation, as we have seen with the Herzog visit, UAE visit, Turkish president's visits to different Gulf countries. Turkey has always sought for stability. Right now, we have war in our southern borders, in Syria, in Iraq, since early 2000s. So these are affecting Turkey in a negative way. So stability, territorial integrity of its neighbors are very important for whoever the government in Turkey. So I think the rest of the world should also understand that, especially Turkey's European and American allies should understand Turkey is for the stability, and stability is good for not only for Turkey but for the whole region, including Europe and Africa. So I think we have reached the end of our time. Do you want to add something, or should we finish?
Well, I think Turkey's diplomatic efforts recently, um, especially in this week, we are seeing that like Turkey is hosting the Israeli president, and at the same time, this weekend there's a big diplomatic forum in Antalya, where uh, a very critical meeting is supposed to happen between Ukrainian and Russian foreign ministers. I just wanted to point out once again, it speaks to the sort of um, Tur- Turkish efforts, Turkish diplomatic efforts that seek both cooperation and also stability in the region and peace in the region, like you stated. So it's a busy region. It's a there are very dangerous things happening. The war in Ukraine has implications for security of Europe. Everybody thinks about Europe, but it has also implications for Black Sea security, directly affecting Turkey. And then uh, like you mentioned, there's conflicts in ongoing in the region that Russia is heavily involved in some of them, and Turkey is often a competitor. At the same time, it has to cooperate with Russia sometimes on the ground. So these are very complex dynamics, but despite all of that, you see Turkey reaching out to these countries, even uh, with some history of difficult relations, and trying to make these efforts. So I think in this episode, we kind of wanted to highlight this. The Turkish diplomatic efforts and what it means for the region and for for stability in the region. So I just wanted to reiterate what you said. I guess yeah, that's about it. But thank you for the discussion this afternoon again, and hopefully hopefully things will get better in the region. Thank you, Bora.
Thank you very much. So hope to see you next week.